Hello everyone, my name is Mitchell Presnell, and the short story that I have chosen for my presentation is The Black Cat by Edgar Allan Poe. A little history about Edgar Allan Poe was he was born on January 19th, 1809, and he attended the University of Virginia where he excelled academically. However, the first year of his schooling, he was forced to leave the university when Francis Allen, his foster father, refused to pay Poe's gambling debts. He began writing his first collection of poems when he enlisted in the United States Army in 1827. Poe's work as an editor, a poet, and a critic had a profound impact on American literature and international literature, and his stories mark him as one of the originators of both horror and detective fiction. So a little bit about the story that I read was the Black Cat would have been by far the darkest story that I have ever read. It begins with an unnamed narrator who opens the story by proclaiming that he is sane despite the wild narrative that is about to unfold. He confesses a great love for cats and dogs, both of which he says respect the fidelity of friendship unlike fellow men. The narrator marries at a young age and introduces his wife to the domestic joys of owning pets, among birds, goldfish, a dog, rabbits, a small monkey, and the narrator singles out a large, beautiful black cat named Pluto, which is his favorite. The narrator begins to suffer from violent mood swings, predominantly due to the influence of alcohol. He takes to abusing not only the other animals, but also his wife. During this uncontrollable mood swing, he also only spares Pluto. One night after returning home quite drunk, the narrator lashes out at Pluto for the first time, believing that the cat is avoiding him. He aggressively grabs the cat, only to be bitten on the hand in self-defense. In demonic retaliation, the narrator pulls a penknife from his pocket and cuts out one of the cat's eyes. Ignored for certain now by the wounded cat, the narrator soon seeks further retaliation. The next morning, the narrator hangs his beloved cat Pluto from a tree. On the night of Pluto's hanging, the narrator's house burns down, but he dismisses the possibility of a connection between the two events. That is, however, until he notices a crowd of people looking at the only wall left standing from the fire, with the impression of a gigantic cat with a rope around his neck on the surface of the wall. The narrator attempts to explain rationally the existence of the impression, but he can't escape himself being haunted of what he has recently seen. A few months pass since the burning of his house. The narrator spends one night getting drunk, and he happens upon a familiar black cat that resembles Pluto. The only difference between these cats is a splash of white fur located on its chest. As with Pluto, the narrator experiences a great fondness for the new mysterious cat, which becomes part of the household and adored by his wife. However, following the earlier pattern, the narrator soon cannot resist a feeling of hatred for this cat. These murderous tendencies intensify when the narrator discovers that the cat's splash of white fur has mysteriously taken the shape of the gallows, which reveals the mode of execution that claimed Pluto, and the narrator pledges revenge. One day, descending into the cellar of his house with his wife, the narrator almost trips over the cat. Enraged, the narrator grabs an axe to attack the cat, but his wife catches his hand and protects the animal. Further angered by this interference by his wife, the narrator turns his rage and buries the axe in her head. The narrator considers many options for the body's disposal, including dismemberment and burial, but he eventually decides to take advantage of the damp walls in the basement and entomb the body behind the plaster and the brick. When he finally turns to the cat, it is missing, and he concludes that it has been frightened away by his anger. 4 days after the murder of his wife, the police arrive in his apartment. Calm and collected, the narrator leads them through the premises, even into the basement. The narrator, however, keeps trying to drive their suspicion, commenting upon the solid craftsmanship of the house. He taps on the wall, behind of which his wife's body, with a cane. In response to the tapping, a loud, long cry comes from behind the wall. The police storm the wall and dismantle it, discovering the hidden corpse upon its head sitting the missing cat. I went ahead and read the Edgar Allan Poe short story that we were supposed to read later on in the semester that is called The Cask of Amontillado. Both of the stories have a common element, that is, both of the main characters are unreliable narrators. The Black Cat's narrator admits that he is under the influence of alcohol and possibly even insanity. He once loved animals, but then he begins to torture them for no apparent reason. Similarly, the Cask of Amontillado features a narrator, Montresor, who seeks revenge upon Fortunato, who does not even seem to know what he has done wrong yet. Montresor is sane enough to plot out an intricate murder, yet he does not even specifically mention Fortunato's sin or explain to Fortunato before his death why he is being killed. Both stories involve immense obsession with alcohol that leads to murder and features live burials in which humans are bricked up behind a wall. The only other story that made me cringe the way that Black Cat has done would be the Chester Himes novel The Heat's On. The brutality towards the cat in Poe's story and the dog in Himes' story is hard to sit through, especially if you're one that takes fondness of animals like me. When first reading this story, it was hard for me to really get a grasp of the emotion and cruelty of Edgar Allan Poe's poetry. So I tried listening to an audio version of the story, which was read by Christopher Lee. I don't know what it was about the story being read by him, but his voice really captivated the dark and twisted story. If you are someone who would rather read a happy-go-lucky story, then I would not recommend the works of Edgar Allan Poe. But if you took an interest in Poe's work or enjoyed reading the Chester Himes novel we read this semester, then I would definitely give this story a read. Thank you.